Hey guys, I'm going to do one of these contribution margin problems. It's a contribution margin with a sales mix. This is problem 351. It's on page 105 in the book. It was a homework problem. We didn't go over it in class, but we went over similar problems in class, so I feel pretty confident about solving this one. And I think something similar will probably show up on the test, so let's just go through it. And it says sales mix, two products. The stock pole company retails two products, a standard and a deluxe version of a luggage carrier. The budgeted income statement for the next period is as follows. And here it is. It gives you all the information. And I just transpose it over here in Excel so that way we can change these numbers as we go along in order to help solve the problem. It wants us to compute the break-even point in units, assuming that the company achieves its planned sales mix. Okay, so in order to get to the break-even point, we want our operating income to be zero. So all we have to do is figure out how much do we have to sell in order to cover that fixed cost. So the first thing you got to do is you got to break down these standard and the deluxe units into their contribution margins and how much of each one is the percentage of sales. So they already told us the contribution margin for the first one is 10 for the standard unit, and for the deluxe unit it's 20. Okay. Now we need to figure out the percentage of sales. So the standards sell 187,500 out of a possible 250,000. And you know what? I'm going to use these numbers over here in this, so that way the Excel will automatically compute any changes later. So this equals this 187,500 out of a possible 250, so that's 75%. And then the deluxe units are equal to 62,500 out of a possible 250,000. So that's 25% of sales. Now the key to this problem is to get the weighted contribution margin. So what you do to get that is you multiply the actual contribution margin times the percentage of sales to get the weighted contribution margin, and that's $7.50. And you do the same thing for the deluxe, and that's $5. So just to check our work, you make sure these numbers add up. Should add up to 100%, and then you add these up. Okay, so we got a weighted contribution margin of $12.50. Now, in order to get the break-even point, is equal to the fixed cost divided by, let me just write this out so it's clear. So that's fixed cost divided by weighted contribution margin. Okay, so that'll equal fixed cost here divided by, and that's breaking point in units. So that's 180,000 units. Now it's not really enough to say it's 180,000 units because we don't know how many of these. They can't be 180,000 of just the standard, because then you wouldn't get the right contribution margin. And it can't be 180,000 of just the deluxe. So we've got to multiply this times these percentages to tell us how many units how many units of each model this 180,000 represents. So for the standard, we take the number of units multiply it times percentage, we get 135,000. And then for the deluxe, we take the number of units multiplied times percentage of the deluxe. Okay, so and those should add up to 180,000, and they do. So that gives us our answer to number 1, the first part of the problem. It says compute the break-even point if only standard carriers were sold, and B, if only deluxe carriers were sold. Okay, so all we have to do for that is change the percentage of the sales, right? So if only deluxe or if only standard were sold, that would be 100%. That would equal 1, and this would equal 0. So now the answer becomes 225,000 units. Okay, now if we want to change that to 0% of standard and 100% of deluxe, we only need to sell 112,500 units. So that's pretty easy calculation in Excel, but if you wanted to do it by hand, you would just change these percentage of sales units and follow through the same steps, and you still divide by the fixed cost of 250,000. So notice here we're still using the fixed cost of 2,250,000 even when these numbers are 0, and that's why it automatically adjusts. Okay, so for number 3, let's just go back and present it as the original. Okay, now it says suppose 250,000 units are sold, but only 50,000 units are deluxe. Compute the operating income, compute the break-even point in units, compare your answer with the answer in requirement 1. What is the major lesson of this problem? Okay, so suppose 250,000 units are sold. We still got 250,000, but only 50,000 are deluxe. So let's change that deluxe to 50,000. Okay, so that would mean standard has to be 200,000. Okay, and look how the numbers change in that case. That weighted contribution margin was 12.5. See, it was 12.5 before the change, and now it's 12. That's because less deluxe are being sold. So to answer the question, what is the major lesson of this problem? Well, basically the main lesson is you want to sell more units of whichever one has the higher contribution margin, and that will create a better scenario for your for your company. That's pretty obvious to say that, you want to sell whatever makes the company the most money, but it's not really just the most money, it's the most contribution margin, because it's possible for something to have a lower sale price on face value, but it might contribute more to contribution margin. Now, it wasn't the case in this example, but you always want to sell which contributes more to your contribution margin, and that's the main idea of this problem. So I hope this helps, and good luck on your test.